Nikon's new ZR. Now, there's a lot to like about this camera. Everything from the R3D RAW capability to the huge screen on the back. Today, we're not here to talk about the camera. We're here more to put the housing together. If you want to know more about the camera, Logan has done a deep dive. Check out his video in the description below. But in the meantime, let me show you how you put this together and get it in the water. Now, before we go through the process of actually getting the camera into the housing, there are a few things I want to talk about as far as settings go. Go ahead and assign the FN1 button to something. I have it set to autofocus. Next, you're going to want to make sure that the shift key is disengaged, so that way you don't have to hold down a button in order to change the variable of the dial. And on that note, go ahead and reverse the dial. I find it to be more natural when you turn the dial on the back of the housing, that it goes up and down respectively. And lastly, it's nice to take the time and go through and customize the eye menu to suit your needs best. Okay, let's go ahead and get the camera into the housing. So what I like to do is take the housing face down here, have it on my counter mat so nothing gets scratched up. I'm going to release the locking lever of the 3 lid snaps. Lift up. Once I've released them, they can come up and over the hook. The back simply pulls off. Set that to the side. And we're going to remove the internal camera mount. Here, you'll notice that it has a 1/4 screw that goes into your camera. Align that screw with your camera. Use a flat-headed screwdriver. We're going to tighten that up. And you're going to want to make sure it's snug. Any movement between the camera mount and the camera can and will result in misalignment of controls. So now that we have the camera mount onto the camera, let's take a look at what we got going on inside. We're going to take a look. We have direct drive controls and make sure that nothing's going to be in our way. You'll check to see your lens release control is oriented properly. There's really not much else to move on this housing. We do have a USB-C cord going to our USB-C bulkhead. We'll talk about that here in a minute. But what you're going to want to do is make sure that you have this plugged into the USB-C port on the side of the camera, just like you would any other USB-C plug. And then you're going to want to take that camera mount and align it with the camera base in the housing and simply slide the camera fully forward. Now we're going to take an opportunity to check our sealing surface here. Make sure it's clean and free of debris. This is a compression O-ring seal, the back to the front, meaning that you don't need lubricant, but I do like to take the opportunity to make sure it's clean and that I don't have any hair or anything that's crossing it. Now I can take my attention to the back itself. Same thing, inspect the O-ring. You'll notice the O-ring is always following an outside curve, so it doesn't want to fold in and pop out. Do make sure it's clean. Again, no lubricants required here. Just check to make sure you're clean, free of debris. Now we can take the back, align it to the front, lift your 2 side lid snaps over the hooks, and then simultaneously press down until they click. Take the opportunity to check to make sure that they locked, and we're going to do the same thing for the top. And when you do that, you're actually going to notice, because the back is fully clear, that in addition to allowing you to see your camera the entire time, you do actually get to see that O-ring compress and make sure that it is intact. And that's as simple as it is to put the camera into the housing. Okay, we've got the camera body installed in the housing. Let's talk about putting a lens on and accommodating it with a port. Take your housing. You have a protective cap and a lens gear sleeve retainer. We're going to take the included tool. It's going to correspond to the 2 slots in that retainer. Simply use the tool to unthread that. Take that out of place. Use gravity. It's going to remove this port cap here. Keep this with your spare parts. And we have a deeper dive on this particular lens. I'm shooting the 14-30. If you want to see that in more detail, check out the link in the description below. Loosen the 3 thumb screws so that they don't protrude to the inside diameter. Take a little of the included Ikelite lubricant. Run it across the O-ring on the port base of the housing, just like we did on the extension. Applying lubricant and feeling for debris. Check your vertical wall sealing surface, again, just above the step here. Provide you with an opportunity to put a little bit of lubricant on that wall and check to make sure that nothing is going to compromise the seal. Now, before we get to this next step, make note that the shade of your dome port, only one of the two shades will correspond to one line of thumb screws. In this particular case, I have the shade in line with these two thumb screws, and that means that if I take this thumb screw and I line it with the top pocket on the port mount, then the shade will be aligned at the top and bottom, or noon and 6. So I'm going to do that. And just like we did the extension, applying firm pressure down until it's seated all the way around the circumference, and tighten the 3 thumb screws on the extension. Now, you have a fully assembled housing for the Nikon ZR with the 14-30 lens. Before we take it to the next step, I turn the camera on, check functionality, make sure that all of my diodes are operating as they should. It is important to note on the back of the housing, the up, down, left, and right will be inverted. This is something that you'll get used to pretty quickly, but it's worth noting that it's not going to behave the same way as it did above the water. But these 4 buttons will actuate the joystick while the center one pushes it, and then you still have access to your menu and playback here. So once everything checks out, now we can go ahead and move on to the last step of creating a vacuum inside the housing. Okay, I've checked my control surfaces. I've taken a picture. I make sure I have a memory card. I've got a fully charged battery. The last thing I need to do is I'm going to create a vacuum on the system, and then I can get in the water and start shooting. Now, in order to create a vacuum, it's fairly simple. All we're going to need to do is push the button on the side of the valve. That's going to release the cap here. Pull it out of place. You'll know it's tethered because it won't get lost that way. And because we took the cap out, we can put the barb of the pump in its place. It clicks in place like so. And we're going to simply use the hand pump to create a vacuum inside the housing. Now you'll notice in this particular instance, because we have this large dome port, keep in mind that you have a larger volume of air inside, meaning that it's going to take a little bit longer to get that vacuum to the point that you're looking to get it to. In this particular scenario, I'm going to shoot for 15. The number that you land on isn't nearly as important as the fact that the needle isn't falling. Once I've hit my target of 15, I'm going to take an opportunity, just observe the needle, make sure that it's not dropping steadily. It seems to be holding fine here. I'm going to let this sit. I'm going to let it sit for a while, and in a perfect world, I would have done this the night before, have it sitting by the door. I can check it one more time before I leave. If you don't have that kind of time frame, give yourself 15-20 minutes. Let it sit, make sure it hasn't dropped a significant amount. That's what you're looking for, is that differential. What I also do suggest here is, when you're pumping, make sure you avoid this plunger on the bottom. This is going to release the vacuum, so you don't want to release the work that you've been working on just while you were pumping up the housing. And then also when you press that button, if you press it, only press it partially, and that'll release the vacuum. So I want to test the system as I'm going to dive with it. I'm not diving with it with this pump, obviously. So if there's a compromise in the pump, I don't want it to throw off my results. I'm going to remove the barb. I'm going to replace it like I always do with the cap. It's very good to get in the habit of always either having the barb or the cap in, which you do not want to do. You do not want to dive with this without the cap installed, because you'll get to a certain depth. Water pressure will overcome the one-way valve and water will start entering through that valve. One last thing on the entire vacuum system is you'll notice the USB-C port, which will allow you to offload or charge your camera. This features a circuit board. If you remove this cap to access charging your camera, let's say, note that air will slowly get through this port here, so it will diminish the vacuum. You will not have a vacuum after you've let this sit open for a time. So if you need that vacuum, make sure that if you've had this open and then you recap it when you're done charging, that you do repump the system to re-establish your vacuum. You're ready to get in the water. If you have any questions about this system whatsoever, shoot us a comment down below or drop us an email to ikelite@ikelite.com.